Welcome, everyone. I'm Amy Seeley, president of Seeley Test Pros and Leap, helping students to succeed in all kinds of tests from 8th grade to grad school throughout Ohio.
And I'm Mike Bergen, president of Chariot Learning, helping students with test, school, and life based out of Rochester, New York.
Between the two of us today, we have over 60 years of experience at the highest levels of the test preparation and supplemental education industries.
We both love to talk and learn about the latest issues in education, testing, and admissions. So let's get down to tests and the rest. The fascinating topic we want to speak about today is ourselves. Is that so wrong?
I know, Mike. I know. Isn't it horrible, right?
Yes,
Every time you say that, Niece, I'm like, yes, we want to talk about ourselves.
We want to talk about ourselves. That's why we do EXTEMP, and this is EXTEMP April 2025.
Yeah. But it's also an opportunity, right? Like for you and I, just to kind of have a reason to to just chat, like, hey, catch up.
That's right.
When it's not about well, I guess we do talk about some of our work projects, but we get to talk in a way that is a little different than we have an actual guest with a topic on it. So let's start then, Mike. What have you been up to since our last
I'll talk about what I
episode?
was up to, but really what everyone wants to know is what you were up to. Last time we spoke about ourselves, you said you were going on a big trip.
I did. I went to France with my mother. Most of the time we were in Paris, which was, we were very lucky. There was no rain. And as the week progressed, the weather got better. So we had some really beautiful, sunny, like 65-degree days, which, you know, when you're traveling and you're outdoors, you can't ask for anything more. After a hellish, hot Italy trip last summer, this was lovely.
Yeah.
But probably I would say that the two highlights of my trip, well, actually, I should say three. Obviously, spending time with my mother, which for all of us, as our parents
I guess
are aging,
you have to say that, right?
that is, I really appreciated that time with her. But the two big things that we went to Normandy. So some people know or don't know, my birthday is June 6th. And my entire life, I have known that my birthday is, do you know what my birthday is? What's special about June 6th, Mike?
Yeah, it's D-Day.
It's D-Day. So for me, and I'm a history buff, and actually World War II history has become like really kind of much more of an interest of mine the last few years with reading. But I was like, no, I have to go to Normandy. If I never go to France again, I really need to go to Normandy. And two of my favorite things are Band of Brothers and Saving Private Ryan. Right. And so it was really the trip out there. I wish we'd had more time actually in the cemetery, the American cemetery, but it was just very kind of surreal to stand on this beautiful beach, this beautiful day. It was cold, but just to see or imagine the atrocity that would have happened there, and to imagine all of the military, the ships and the tanks and the weapons. And so it was very quiet. It was just very kind of eerily quiet and beautiful. I was just really glad that we made that trip, that day trip to Paris, from Paris. So that was awesome. And then the other thing is, upon the advice of a few friends, one of which actually is Susan Powers, she's like, you have to go to Sainte-Chapelle.
And what is that?
So it's basically, it's a chapel. It's not a huge chapel. It's not a big church or anything like that, like Notre Dame. It's very close to Notre Dame. But I thought Notre Dame would be like the highlight of the trip, right? Because they just opened it in December. And I thought, lucky me, now I'm going to get to see it. What I liked about Notre Dame was the rose window, obviously the stained glass, but Sainte-Chapelle is just like these amazing, you're surrounded by stained glass windows. And it reminded me of being in the Sistine Chapel last summer and just being like, I want to stay here forever. I just want to sit here and bask in the beauty of this art that surrounds me.
Is that frowned upon? You can't stay there
Well,
all
no,
day?
it's kind of like the Sistine Chapel in that there are a few little seats around, but ultimately you have, you can only stand for so long taking it in and looking around. But it was just the most awe-inspiring art in terms of just the sun coming in the windows. And then there's kind of sometimes this sadness when you go, I'm seeing this and I had this opportunity, this beauty, and I'll probably never be here again. But that taking in that moment, which is just really beautiful. And so that's how I felt about it. I was so happy that people had said, no, you have to see this. And so we made that extra attempt on our last day to make sure that we got to take that in. And I was really glad for the recommendations of people because they were spot on.
Yeah, Sainte-Chapelle. Okay.
Yep. So there you go, Mike. Check it out.
I mean, I love stained glass. Who doesn't?
So, Mike, what have you been up to since we last chatted?
So when last we met, I was talking about a trip that I was going on, and I actually went on two family-related trips last month. The first was I went out to Colorado Springs to
Mhm.
usher in my son's 21st birthday,
Yay.
and we had a blast. We went to Pikes Peak, we went to Garden of the Gods. We basically did all the tourist stuff in Colorado Springs that he really didn't do. Like he hadn't been to Pikes Peak yet.
Sure.
We went out. I got some great recommendations for places to eat. We went to the Broadmoor where he works and had
Hmm.
lunch there. And basically I had a chance to, parent him a little bit, which was
Oh.
which fantastic.
Gentle parenting as an adult, raising an adult, right?
Absolutely. I mean, really, it's more we're easing into that, adult to adult relationship, which is fantastic. It's what I've
Hmm.
always wanted. But there are certain times where, dad's got to take the wheel.
Yep.
And then, speaking of fathers, this past weekend, my wife and I drove down to Virginia to surprise my father-in-law for his 83rd birthday.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, we thoughtfully didn't straight out surprise him. We called
Uh-huh.
him from a few hours away just to give him time to adjust to the
Don't
idea
give the
that we
poor
were
man a heart
coming.
attack. No.
And his wife knew. So like we had
Yeah.
planned ahead that they were free. But we saw, not just my father-in-law, who I've been very close to for decades, but his siblings and,
Oh, nice.
just a whole generation of family that we got to take them all out to dinner. It's nice to go to Virginia this time of year where in Rochester, it's still, winter's holding on.
Winter. Winter hasn't let
Winter's
up.
holding on, but as we drove from
Isn't that this time of
Rochester
year?
down to Virginia,
Yes.
we entered spring where first the leaves, trees were budding a little bit and then they were leafing.
It's
And
kind of
it's
crazy
not like
that
full
drive.
blown. Yeah,
Yes.
but it's
This
amazing.
time of year. Yeah, because you get to like it's like you're in a movie and you're watching like you drive into a different season. That's nice.
That's exactly right.
You got some nice weather when you were down there.
It was amazing that, it's been so chilly where we live. And the temperatures rose. They had one hot day where it got up to over 80
Oh,
degrees.
wow. Wow.
And we conveniently were on a boat and
Oh,
like
that's
doing
nice.
a tour of Assateague Island and chasing all the wild horses, all the wild ponies.
Mhm.
Um, and so I was out there long enough to get a sunburn, which I was very happy to do. And then by evening, the temperature had dropped 30
Right.
degrees down to
I
the
must
50s.
ask in these trips, any birding adventures while traveling to these?
Certainly. I mean, we migration is really just starting there.
Hmm.
So there was nothing spectacular to see from the songbird front, but just there's a whole host of water birds and waders, ibises and
Hmm.
ospreys and eagles. Actually, the best thing is that there are nesting bald eagles right across the street from my father-in-law's house. He has a scope trained on the nest, so you can
Hmm.
see the
Oh,
chicks.
wow.
And he had hay and we saw, I mean, this was so close. A bald eagle came down, landed on the hay,
Oh my,
grabbed a lot. I mean, it was as close as you get to an eagle. And we
wow,
just
that's awesome.
watched it do its thing, grabbing nesting materials. So that was really fantastic.
Well, as you know, the last two, so when I see a bird on a trip, I reach out to you.
Yes.
The irony, if you
It's
recall, is
always the same bird, though.
no, it's all, I saw the bird in Colorado and I was like, oh my gosh. And then here I am, I'm at Versailles and I go, oh,
Yeah.
look at that cool bird, mom. And then I send you a picture and it's like, there's the same bird. Like, apparently my eye only sees magpies.
You'll
Mike, that's
learn, though.
me.
You'll now, I think by now,
No, I know to
are
look
we
for it.
that far from you getting a magpie tattoo? I mean, that's your
Maybe
bird.
that's maybe I have no tattoos, so and I think about getting one and I'm like, what would it be? I mean, the big deal for getting a tattoo, there's two things,
This
one
is
of
the
which is
universe
what is
speaking
it.
to you. It should
the
be a
first
magpie.
the first part is what's the tattoo, Mike, and you know what the second question one has to ask when they're going to
Where
get a
is
tattoo,
it? Where's it going to
where.
go? Yeah.
So sometimes I think I know what the what is. The where, I don't know. Every place I can think about the where, Mike, is a place that I couldn't see. And then I
Right.
think, why? Why put it there if I will never see?
I agree with that philosophy, right? Like if it's for you, but then again, I mean, tattoos are to be seen in the mirror anyway.
Yeah,
Unless you're going to put it on your wrist or your
yeah,
ankle,
right.
uh, you're not going to see it.
No. I mean, I've seen someone get a tattoo, but not
Yeah.
on me. So there you go. But
That's a
yeah,
story we won't share here.
that's a story for another day. So,
Okay, let's move on and talk about what you've been doing. You are
so
getting
work
serious about
wise.
ChatGPT, are
So
you?
that actually, so I think when we went to the NTPA conference in December, and we normally will put like what's a goal, something you want to be working on for the next year. And I did. I put like I need to start harnessing the power of Chat GPT. Um, some of that is out of embarrassment when all of my colleagues and peers are like passing me by with what they're doing with it. So, but sort of prompted by a fun prompt this weekend, which was to create like yourself as an action figure and like
Oh,
whatever.
that was so good.
I was
Amy
playing
Test Prep
around with that.
Barbie was really
Yeah, so
fantastic.
I had a lot of fun with that. But I actually had two chat GPTs going. So if it makes you feel better, one was making my perfect action figure, Amy Seeley action figure. The other was, okay, how do I start to really think about topics for newsletters and putting something together because that's also a goal of 2025 is just to be communicating more and always observing and trying to take your lead, Mike. And so I'm proud to say, like over the weekend, I was like, oh, what are two topics that I would want to do a newsletter on, like I think of right away that are going to be timely right now? So I did. I actually put together a counselor newsletter that's going to go out. And then I put together a kind of a parent newsletter. So it was good to start getting experience using it and then just getting over that hump. Anything new you're going to do, right? You have that initial like, oh, the need to be perfect. And I really, honestly, my mantra is to be like perfectly imperfect or succeeding imperfectly, right? I sometimes tell you.
Uh,
And so that's like the first step. So actually, when I did the two on Saturday, I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many more of them. I
yes.
texted you to tell you how proud of myself I was. But it really felt good to feel like, no, I have some direction. Like I have some sense of this is what the process would look like. Here's how I can go about it. And the beautiful thing was on a Saturday, I was like, oh, I could probably make a few of these and like
And
queue
then
them
prepare
up.
them. Right? When you're in
I'm
the
like, oh
mode,
my
you
God,
batch them, right? That's how
that's
productivity really operates. You do a bunch at once and then you trail it. And this is, I'm proud of you. This is you've been eager to do it. You've known that starting to write to counselors, starting to write to students and families on your mailing list would be valuable. And it just took some time to get there. And now that you're doing it, I'm sure you're going to see immediate benefits.
let's, let's hope, Mike, right? Because it's hard to do something and then go, okay, what's the
Well,
benefit?
I
But
will say counselor emails are not about immediate benefits. They're about long-term
right,
relationships.
no, and that's you and I know that even with the
Yeah.
podcast, right? We know that like things take time and in the beginning you have to enjoy the process because that keeps you doing it. And I did feel like I was enjoying the process, which partially is because I have, with Leap now, I my tutoring time is being reduced. So I have more time to kind of get into these projects. So I was happy to do it and it was fun.
So I have a related, so
You have
so
a
on the
related thing.
topic of
Yes.
both learning to leverage AI and sending newsletters,
Mm-hmm.
I have taken on another project. And I know people who listen to us talk, I'm always talking about a new project.
Mike's
And
always
I
about projects.
but I feel like my projects I scaffold up. It's funny because our friend Travis Miner, he was like, "Is this a cry for help, Mike? How many newsletters can a person have?" Because I publish a lot of newsletters already, right? Like write the Test and the Rest weekly newsletter. I write the Roost to Words daily vocabulary newsletter. I write the College Road newsletter, which is, not just for chariot learning families, but also just for anybody who wants to kind of follow college news. And I write the Tutor, the newsletter for
Tutors.
tutors, for
Mm-hmm.
educators. So I have all these newsletters in process, but they're all of a certain scale. And I'm a big fan of the mega newsletters, the newsletters that become true media publications with all of the opportunities and excitement around that.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to learn how to use ChatGPT in an effective way that doesn't dilute my editorial voice. I wanted to learn how to scale something. This is the year that I want to learn to scale something really large. I like small I like a small boutique practice, a small this, like, you know, I want to try something to reach lots and lots of people at once. So, in going through the process, I took a class. I signed up for a newsletter class finally after doing it all myself for so long.
Which is crazy because you've been doing so many newsletters, but now you're like, like you're gonna perfect it. Like you
Well,
took a
that's the way we
class.
are, right? It's like the teachers that the tutors that don't ever want to pay for coaching because they're like, well, I do this all the time, but sometimes you need coaching to go to the next level. It's like our students that prepped on their own and they're like, I want to be better,
Yeah,
faster. And
precisely.
it's like, well, bring in an expert. So
Right.
I'm okay with that. And I realized, and this is shocking, right? Because you and I came into the test and the rest as educators from
Hmm.
the test side, not the rest side. We
The rest.
and
We envisioned
yet,
though, Mike. We knew there was a rest.
well, we knew that there's a rest
We
because
were
we
part
work
of the
with the rest
rest.
all along. But isn't it phenomenal to recognize how much we've learned over the last 6 years? That we
100%.
talk about college every week.
Every
We
day.
talk about every aspect of
And we're
college
not
admission,
IECs, mind you. We're
education,
not
learning.
IECs, but we talk
Yeah,
about it all the time.
because we speak with IECs all the time, and I find like we're in a position where we actually have a lot of knowledge about this. So I'm like, why don't I just like really bring it all together, bring in all the different threads from the test prep side, from the test and the rest, and the college admissions side, all the newsletter side, put it all together for a newsletter that is launching this week. I actually, once
Yay.
XTEMP is released, it will
It
have
will
already
already be out
launched.
there.
And I'm
Hmm.
calling it College Eagle.
Love it.
And I wanted something with a mascot. I used AI to create an eagle, like College Eagle, Easy Eagle. And I'm having so much fun putting together. And you're the first person who saw
I
my
saw it.
draft.
I did
You saw my
actually,
draft. It's
and I love. I like the eagle. I like actually. He's wearing a. Is that's a Texas Longhorns little logo
so he's wearing a Texas Longhorn shirt
because
because
you're
one of the news things is about UT Austin, but I'll change what he's wearing every issue,
depending upon the focus, right?
depending
Exactly.
on the
Well, it's
focus,
only funny
right?
because I was like, I visited UT
Yeah,
in the fall, so I was like, oh, I've been there. I was in the Longhorn. I bought my pennant, So yeah.
that's right.
But no,
Hook 'em
there's
horns.
so I can attest to the fact that having seen the first version, there's so much great information in there. There's a lot
Thank
of
you.
really good stuff in there. Very well, like you always do, Mike. Very well thought out, very well written. I think people find like a wealth of knowledge in there when they receive
So
the
this is
newsletter.
the new, down the road. I'm sure we'll do a spotlight or something to let test, to really get it out there. But I'm excited. I'm excited for this, and just because it's a further elevated expression of all the work we're already doing.
Yeah. Well, sometimes so many things we do, we kind of do them one because we have a passion or interest. And then slowly it starts to crystallize, I think, what we want it to be or what we want it to do. And I think that's kind of the exciting thing about it, right? Like you're saying, is I think this is sort of a culmination of a lot of the stuff you've been doing,
Yeah,
over these last few years. Yeah.
exactly.
Which
So
is
fingers
cool.
crossed on this one. And speaking of crossing fingers, rumor has it that come September, the enhanced ACT will have reached its full potential. It will have flowered
It will.
into what it is. And so, we're assuming that that's happening. Are you ready for the enhanced ACT yet? What are you
Well,
thinking of doing?
so, I mean, interestingly, I think by the time this episode airs, we will have released a beautiful episode on somebody taking the new enhanced ACT digitally on April 5th,
Hmm.
which, of course, that conversation, if you didn't already listen to it, I'm going to tell people that you definitely have to listen to it, a tester's perspective. But that generated, right, for the two of us talking about this. And obviously, we've sort of been kind of, holding off, waiting, thinking about, teaching ACT in this new form, right? And what is that going to look like for our curriculum materials? And as Leap and Sealy Test Pros made the transition to using the SAT test break curriculum, which is going really well.
I
So
love to
of
hear that.
course, here I am going, okay, we know that that these edits are going to happen. And so what the depth of that is going to look like, I think on the surface, we know some of the changes are minimal, like what's the number of questions and what's the number of minutes.
Yes.
But some of the changes might have to be more, not more substantial, but more really considering some of this feedback we're hearing.
Right.
And
There might be some issues, regarding the distribution of content. Is there any content that has been removed from the test? Is there any content that has been added to the test? The only areas we're really seeing that potential is in math
in math,
and
yeah.
maybe science.
Yeah.
But the problem is that right now we only have one test. We only have
Released
one
test.
enhanced ACT in the actual format, meaning not an old ACT that has been enhanced,
Sure. Right.
which they released. That doesn't tell us anything. A new enhanced ACT to see what's really going on. Our secret shopper, the person who took the test that we interviewed, really saw big differences in the math section.
Yeah. I think that's where we're expecting some
Yes.
real changes. It's interesting too. I did just read somebody else's blog who had taken the ACT as well. So it was interesting to try to compare what we know from our secret shopper versus some others. And definitely the math seems to be the place. Although obviously what we don't know is with having field test items, experimental questions, it's trying to figure out is some of that content field test or not. As I was writing my newsletter, Mike, which is about the enhanced ACT, that's what I actually was writing the blog on this weekend. I was really thinking about what is interesting. I think the takeaway was the fact that we anticipate one passage of English, one passage of reading, and one passage of science to potentially be the field test. So
Yes.
potentially when you're working one of those, whether it's 5 or 4 or 6, 7 passages, but math is different because they're individual questions.
Yeah.
So what could be field tests? There is really no way to tell, most especially because one of the biggest takeaways was the fact that the expected difficulty going kind of from easier to medium to harder questions in math was not what was observed. It was kind of seemingly more of a randomization of difficulty, which means, who knows where harder questions will be or whether those might be some of those field test items.
We see this on the SAT now, right? Because the field test items are embedded. And when you're doing the math section, so just for listeners that aren't as steeped in the difficulty patterns of these exams, on the verbal sections of tests, like certainly on the ACT, difficulty is entirely random in English and reading. On the SAT reading writing section, it kind of goes up and down. You have words and context questions from easiest to hardest, and then you have the next first reading skill, easiest to hardest, second. So you're used to a progression, and there's so few of each question type that it really almost feels random. But math is supposed to go roughly from easiest to hardest. The first
And we've seen that on both
on a
SAT and
section
ACT,
should be the
right?
easiest. Most students should get it right. The last question on a section, most students are getting wrong. And what we noticed on the SAT was the embedded field test items could sometimes dramatically ramp up the difficulty in an inappropriate place. I know that some of the practice tests, right, like number 8 on a section, incredibly hard question, where you look at it and you're like, that definitely doesn't count. It couldn't possibly count.
And full disclosure, kids can't take the test spending all the time trying to predict,
That's right. They can't.
but they have to
They
sort of
can't.
take it, but then learn how to manage it when it happens. Like, okay, I don't know, or guess or move on, or what the
Guess or move
strategies
on
are.
because that also messes up your timing. It's a good point. Another issue is that the ACT, and we've been talking about this, and I feel based on reports that these predictions are actually accurate, is that the enhanced ACT provides all kinds of benefits to the test taker. More time per math question, fewer items. They're cutting it from 5 to 4. Just on the face of it, a shorter test with more time per question and an easier random guess to the right answer is easier. It's an easier test, but they can't have an easier test. The test has to be the same.
Not everyone can get a
difficulty
perfect score,
level.
right? That's not the point, right?
Yeah, scorers have to fall within that curve, whatever
Distributions.
curve they're looking for, whether it's standard distribution or something similar. So something has to be harder. And what we are hearing is that it's just a harder section. Like
Yeah.
content-wise, it's a harder section. It
Yeah.
might be that problem-solving-wise, it becomes a harder section. It might, I shudder to say this, Amy, but the ACT might become more of like the SAT.
Yeah. Well, I mean, certainly some of the things we talk about in the episode with math are eerily similar to some of the harder content that we're seeing on SAT math. So that is interesting. But again, as we both know, one tester's perspective or a couple testers' perspective is not always indicative of where the test will be in the next year or two. And so that's obviously where we say stay tuned. Now, the good news is, fingers crossed, maybe starting next week, the week of April 21st, first week of May, we'll see the new official ACT prep guide with some tests that might give us a little bit more insight than we have
That's
so
right.
far. But what that does mean is for people who are looking to update their ACT curriculum, that's coming. We're getting very close to when I think we can start to say by the end
Yes.
of May.
I'm excited I really plan to have the test break curriculum revisions ready in June
Hmm.
because summer's going to be a hot time for prep.
Yeah.
And, we just have to be ready for the September ACT. Even students taking the July ACT, they should be taking the legacy, the current
Mhm.
version of the ACT. Nobody should be jumping ahead and taking the enhanced ACT in June or July. It just doesn't make sense.
No. But I will say, just as like my little recommendation to families would be if you think you're going to take the July ACT or you want to be in the queue for the July, get registered now. Because we do know that test sites are generally very limited in July. And for the many of those students trying to take maybe their final ACT in the legacy format, I love that we're calling it legacy, that word.
Well,
But
we're not calling it legacy. They're calling it
ACT,
legacy.
right. But the idea would be if you're a listener and you're the parent, of a class of 2026er, be aware that the July, if that's the final one, get registered now and secure a spot because it might not be there if you wait, let's say until May or even June to register. Yeah.
Exactly. All right, last thing to talk about. You and I are both going to Detroit in May.
Yeah. We get to do a presentation together, Mike, at
We do
IECA.
at the IECA, Independent Educational Consultants Association Conference, which we love to go to, don't we?
Oh, we love. It's one of our favorite. It's one of my favorite things I've come to look forward to about the beginning of May. But what is interesting, actually, for me, you probably didn't think about this, but we've co-presented, but on Zoom. This, Mike, will be
Yes.
the first time we co-present in
Oh, that's
person,
funny.
right?
That's so funny that you and I never share a stage. Like we've hosted our own
We
summits. Like we've
Zoom,
hosted
like
live events
we
together,
co-host in Zoom.
and
We
we
co-host
never.
online, but we'll
So,
be
right,
side by
I've
side.
presented at IECA before.
You did. You are not. I am a novice to this, but you are seasoned.
I wouldn't say seasoned, but I know how it goes, and I'm looking forward to this. We are presenting with a couple of fantastic
Yes,
co-presenters, Margaret Rothy from
Council Moore,
Council Moore, Zach Galen, right?
Galen Education. Yep.
Like it should be great. And what's our topic going to be again?
So basically, right, it's about scaling your business. Like, what is it? What's involved in scaling, you know, in this world? And the good news is what I love about our sort of team, if you will, of presenters on our panel is that we're speaking to different things you can do, right? So it's kind of we have some versatility built into what we're talking about because if you do own an educational business or practice, we're going to be showing a lot of things to give you some ideas or perspectives about basically how to grow your business. And we have some unique perspectives, I think, on that, which will be interesting.
The concept, or really the discussion of scaling your practice, is relevant to educational consultants, it's relevant to tutors and educators, it's relevant to anyone. And I like that we're going to explore both how to scale your practice if you want to stay solo, how to scale your
Hmm.
practice if you want to add members of your team, like all the different ways to do it. We've got lots of experience. It really touches on a lot of the things that
Yeah,
you and I have supported our colleagues with in NTPA.
sure. Exactly. 100%. And it's also interesting too, because I think what it's doing for us is we're taking a very intentional look at our own businesses or, educational practices and saying, oh, hmm, how did I think about that then? How do I think about this now? And kind of thinking about for the future, which is exciting.
So, any listeners who will be at the IECA conference in May in Detroit, you definitely need to look us up. You will find us floating around because neither of us are tethered to the NTPA table this year.
We are
And in
not. Yeah.
fact, we're trying something new. We're going to have a table promoting Tests and the Rest and
Yes.
all of our general enterprises
Yeah.
in the college fair section.
Which will be fun, which will be really fun. Yeah. I mean, like, because we usually rep other things. This is
That's
like
right.
repping ourselves, which is kind of interesting. We don't
I
do that
know
as much
it's both odd and exhilarating to be
at the same
free
time.
to just promote our own projects and practices.
Yep, 100%, 100%.
Fantastic. Well, look, Amy, I know that we could talk about ourselves all day. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Thank you, as always, for taking some time for XTEMP.
Awesome. We hope you enjoyed this discussion as much as we did. Be sure to join us for another fascinating topic and guest on the next Tests and the Rest.
Did you enjoy this episode as much as we did? Find expanded links and more for this and all of our episodes at our show page at testsandtherest.com. While you're there, be sure to explore everything the larger TestBright site has to offer, including real, expert, unbiased answers to the toughest admissions testing questions. Of course, we'd love for you to rate, review, and subscribe to Tests and the Rest on your favorite podcast platform. If there's a topic or guest you'd like us to feature, just let us know and spread the word.